Good morning, everyone. I'm the Reverend Nic Cable, and you might notice we're in a little different setup today. I serve as minister of this wonderful congregation, and today is our first time experimenting with what we're calling Beacon Interfaith Dialogues. And so we are so excited to have you here because today we're going to have a special conversation for the majority of the service between myself and one of the leaders of our community who happens to be on staff and also who's one of the leaders of the Tree of Knowledge Community Coven, which is a local and kind of regional pagan and earth-centered community here in Columbus, Indiana. And so today, I'm really grateful for Brittany Phillips, who's going to be joining me now up here, and we're gonna have an opportunity for her to share more about herself, for me to share more about myself, to find commonalities between the two. Maybe there's some differences as well, and also to have time for questions from all of you. Again, this is not like our normal services. You might notice from all of the plants on the stage and the nice warm environment that we're trying to foster, and hopefully it's working well. So welcome, Brittany.
Hello, everyone. It's so nice to be here. It almost feels like a talk show. So, for some of you, you may know that I am a lover of nature, but also a severe allergy sufferer. So, I apologize if I sound a bit like a Muppet today. And I'm sure there are other people that also struggle with allergies, so I'm sure y'all understand. So, I was invited to share some opening words today, and these come from what might be an unexpected place. A lot of you are familiar with our gray hymnals, but you might not know that after the musical portions, there are also beautiful readings from a variety of faiths in the back of here. So I'm going to share some opening words from the back of our very own hymnals. And if you'd like to follow along, this is number 417 by Barbara Peskin. For the beauty of the earth, the spinning blue-green ball, yes, Gaia, mother of everything, we walk gently across your back to come together again in this place, to remember how we can live, to remember who we are, to create how we will be. Gaia, our home, the lap in which we live. Welcome us.
I think this is going great.
This is lovely.
So this is the first of two parts of our dialogue today. The first part, we give you a little allusion to some of the segments, so you don't have to get anxious. And then we'll have an offering, and then we'll have the second part and some time for questions. So the first part that Brittany and I talked about, knowing that this is going to be one of a series, perhaps quarterly or maybe 5 times a year with different interfaith leaders, we want to kind of start the way we wish to continue. And so one of those is to really hone in on why dialogue, why conversation. You know, there's a lot of things we could do. We could do a service project. We could have a fight. No, just kidding. We could do a lot of things, right? We could build an interfaith multi-purpose building. That would be a good idea. We could do a lot of things, but we're choosing to have a dialogue today. And I'm wondering first, what do you feel about dialogue? What does that mean to you? And why did you say yes to doing it?
Well, first off, I love being here. I love being a part of community. And with that comes the opportunity to connect with one another. So my main reason for being here is because I love this community. I believe that it is so vitally important for people to have a connection with others, but also this is a great opportunity for me to learn about Unitarian Universalism. It's a great opportunity for you to learn about paganism and for us to build these bridges across the many faiths that share this space and the community of Columbus. So for me, dialogue is more than just talk, just chit chat. Anyone can do that. But for me, dialogue is intentional listening, intentional understanding, instead of talking with the hope of having a good, witty response, which we all appreciate. but a dialogue with the emphasis on understanding each other fosters a connection that wouldn't otherwise be there over coffee chit chat. So,
Absolutely. And I think she alluded to something is that the Tree of Knowledge Community Covenant is one of 5 communities that has their religious community main gathering here on the Columbus Interfaith campus. We have the pagan community, the UU community. Of course, we have the Hindu temple and the Hindu community just through the parking lot here. Then there's also a Buddhist community and a Jewish community. And so dialogue is almost not non-negotiable. It is sort of necessary to live in this world, is to engage across differences. And so all the more reason for us to practice it, model it, and to find more ways to do it together. I also think something really important happens when we dialogue. There's a process of what Paulo Freire called humanization that happens. Each of us become more human. We choose to break out of a cycle of power over or power under, and we choose to humanize one another in the dialogue. So we start to see each other not as 2-dimensional, but 3-dimensional, and even 4th-dimensional with the life that you lived and the legacy and lineage that you're a part of, whether it's a spiritual tradition, a family ancestry, or anything like that. We humanize one another when we choose to listen deeply. We humanize one another when we share from a deep place within ourselves. And that humanization can be very vulnerable, and that's why it takes community to build that sort of resilience that we can do together. So again, I'm grateful that you've been willing to model that resilience, model that courage as we start this series today. So dialogue is clearly important, and we're going to model that a little bit further here by getting into a word that you just named, which is kind of a loaded term for some of us. For you as well, which is the word pagan. Did anyone hear her say that word? Pagan. And Unitarian Universalist, the 10-syllable mouthful from not the marketing department of the historic Unitarian Universalist Association, came up with a 10-syllable phrase to define us in our religious identity. Both paganism and Unitarian Universalism is hard to describe for some people, and it perhaps holds a lot of meaning that is both true and half true or 1/4 true. And so, we really wanted to hone in as we start a little bit on this idea of what's in a name. And so, Brittany, how do you understand the word pagan or paganism, and how do you personally associate with it?
well, the term paganism, like many words in the English language, have changed, adapted, been used for different contexts over the many centuries. At its root, pagan comes from the word paganus, the Latin word for one who dwells close to the land. This could mean a farmer, it could mean a peasant, it could be a lover of all things natural, and eventually, over time, it was used as a word to separate those who were of the church and those who were of the land. Over time, it became more synonymous with people who were outside of community, outside of connection, or outside of faith. So it is a bit of a loaded term these days, but at its root, it means someone who still lives close to the land. Now, it is a European word, so it isn't a term that resonates with a lot of people that are outside of European descent. So you may hear the word earth-centered, the phrase earth-based spirituality more often, which encompasses a wider circle of people, but may not include everyone. That's why it's important that we talk about what these words mean, who associates with them, because these are umbrella terms. And like an umbrella, it's a useful tool. It's better than having nothing, especially in this weather. But we have to keep in mind that this tool may not work for everyone. It may not cover everyone, and to be mindful of how language is used. And I imagine that's very true here with Unitarian Universalists as well.
Yes.
Because, oh, go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, you're good. I was like, man,
I'm a
awesome
rambler.
handoff. Unitarian Universalism similarly is kind of a loaded term. It's a term that is not as widely known as like pagan or Christian or some of the big world's religions. But Unitarian Universalism is both something a lot of us might feel an association with, but might not always know the simplest way from point A to point B to describe it. And part of it is that similar to pagan and paganus, Yeah, is that the term was originally, especially Unitarian, let me start with that, was not a term that we chose for ourselves. There's a lot of different ways that this term kind of came into being, but one of the most popular ones was that it was a definition as a counter definition to Trinitarian. So instead of being Trinitarian, we were Unitarian, as in the Trinity versus the unity of God, which is what the Unitarians believed, which was a central definition of us early on, that we believed that rather than God being in three co-equal parts, we believed as God indivisible, and Jesus more in the line of prophets, an exemplar of moral living and someone to follow rather than worship. So Unitarian and Universalist eventually became Unitarian Universalist, and that became a term that, of course, we use now today. But I also think, like you're saying, when we're not careful about how we use it, assumptions can come in, stereotypes can come in. I remember coming out here early, 2017, when I got here. One of the things I heard was that there was I don't know, assumptions or stereotypes that people thought we were out here kind of dancing around the fire, and sounds like that would have been fun with the pagan community
I
too.
do that.
But just kind of like wild kind of banshees and things like that.
Well, the day's still young.
The day is young. We have to dry the wood off, but assumptions can be made, and then at the same time, whether it's the pendulum swing to something that's more of a distortion of who we are, it could also be like, oh, we're very similar to First Presbyterian, or something like that. So it's paradoxical. We could be both. Oh, we're just kind of like, kind of First Pres or First Methodist or one of the liberal mainline traditions here in town, or we're something completely off the deep end. And the reality is we're a little of both. We're off the deep end, and we're kind of in the shallow end as well. So talk to me a little bit more about, did we talk about this? Oh, we talk about this a little bit later. But so anything else you want to share about the word pagan, or how you would like people to use the term?
Right. So we have both talked about how different labels affect how people are perceived. And the thing that I really want to emphasize is that labels are sometimes used as a tool to separate people. There's these people, and then us over here. But there's a lot more that we have in common than we have that divides us. And something that I think it's really important to understand is that we don't put labels on who we are because it separates us. As speaking on behalf of spiritual leaders, it is very useful to understand where people are coming from, because these labels that can often be used to divide are also used to unite. Who here is a gardener? Who here is an environmentalist? Who here is a parent or grandparent? These are all labels that we use to find things in common with one another. It shouldn't separate us from them, but it allows us to seek community with those who we identify with. And I believe that overlaps a lot with how Unitarian Universalists function. A lot like our overlapping circles in the Venn diagram. We have a lot of overlap in our community.
That's right. That's right. And so oftentimes, like a couple weeks ago, we did that everybody who, and we kind of raised our hand if you relate to the thing that was said. You could also think of that as one of the ways you do it when you run across the circle to find a new spot, to give a little high five to someone because you found something in common that you share with them. And one of the things we're going to do now is a little what's that called? Segment. We're piloting. Again, this is our first time doing this, called a little high five. And so we have a little slide here. And what Brittany and I thought would be really fun is for us to talk about 5 things that we each wish that people knew about paganism and Unitarian Universalism. Taken together, a little bit of a high five together. We won't actually do that. That would be way too for the camera.
No, you're not
So
that cheesy. No.
yes, we're not that cheesy. And so Brittany and I will switch off and offer some insights about things that might help us to better understand paganism and Unitarian Universalism today. Brittany, do you want to start?
Absolutely. So, the main thing that I would like for people to know about paganism who may not be very familiar with what our faith is all about is that we're not really that scary. Very similar to Unitarian Universalists, we just like spending time with community and spending time in nature. We pagans and earth-centered faiths have gotten a bad rap for a long time about being scary, about being other, being deviants, and outside of community, when really community is our bread and butter. It's what we're all about. And instead of leaning into the Hollywood stereotype of, we're scary, mysterious, a lot of pagans and earth-centered practitioners try to be open in public and say, hey, we're just tree huggers. We're just dancers around the full moon. We are just enthusiasts about bonfires. This is what we do, and you're welcome to join us. You are welcome to dance around the maypole with us, or come and eat some of our award-winning cornbread.
Award-winning cornbread.
Well, we're a little biased. We give the awards. So.
That's right. We did that with chili one time. Well, let's go with ours. You might see there's a maypole here. Our first slide for UU is the following. What? There's our
Look at that.
maypole. That's kind of funny. That was a couple years back. You might recognize some folks in there. So our first one that I think is a good thing we wish you to know is that we're not just, that's a italicized just a bunch of hippies. There are still a generational group that could identify as the hippie movement. We are that. That is part of that half truth that stereotypes can be. There can be some truth in perceptions of folks, but we're more than that. We're a multi-generational, centuries long movement of liberal progressive voice, which meant something different in each of those generations. We are lovers of life. We are encouragers of justice. As our mission statement says, we celebrate love and work for justice. And so much of what we are as a community is something we'll get to a little bit later, which is that we'd like to build connections across differences. We seem to have a corner of the market in being able to speak across differences to bring our community a little bit closer together. So while there is a bunch of peaceniks and hippie-oriented folks, and whatever the modern terms are, there is quite a diversity of thought and practice within our community of Unitarian Universalism. And that doesn't even get beyond Columbus, Indiana. You just go a couple hours north to a congregation elsewhere in Indiana, or out east or out west. You'll find all different kinds of things that show similarity to Unitarian Universalism, but also deviation as well.
Well, the number two thing that I would like for people to know about paganism is that our central belief is that all things are interconnected, that we are just one small cell in this living body that is Mother Earth. And I picked this piece of art, the Millennial Gaia, from one of my favorite authors, O. Bronzell Ravenheart. And this work is based on the Gaia hypothesis, which pairs a theological idea with also an ecological movement of believing that all living things live independence of one another in nature. Where one thrives, they all thrive. We all lift each other up in this rising tide together. So that is the core of our beliefs. It is really nothing scary, just reverence for nature, but also reverence for all living things that share this earth together.
Could have when we flipped the coin to see who goes first, you got to go first, and now you get to do all this. It seems like I could have said the same thing. Our next one is that our world is one world, which is our closing hymn today. So we might remember back to that. And we do have a similar kind of sentiment in Unitarian Universalism, which is the belief in this interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part, and which I like to say, this was our old principle language. We've shifted language a little bit, but when we said the interdependent web of existence of which we're all a part, we also don't say of which we are the center. We are a part of this interdependent web of existence of all beings and all of life and the earth and everything that populates that space of land and sea and air. And so, and because our world is one world, it really drives our ethics. And similarly, we're all interconnected, and what happens to one affects all. Similarly, the belief in the interdependent web of existence drives us to focus on to root out injustice and to foster more compassion where compassion is so needed today. So I appreciate that.
So Something that you may not know about paganism is that it's a bit of a paradox. It is very, very old, but also very, very new. While the Reconstructionist movement began in the 1950s, it is based on practices that are much, much older than written records. There are many examples of people seeking a spiritual connection to the earth in the cave paintings of Lascaux, France, in different tribes, different communities all around the world that predate a written record, which unfortunately means that when we go to retrace those steps, to rebuild these traditions, and to understand how our ancestors lived and practiced and celebrated, we kind of have to study a bit of anthropology, a bit of archaeology to put the puzzle pieces together, because a lot of these bits of our history, of our beliefs, were kind of lost to time, intentionally or unintentionally. So it is both very ancient in theory, but in practice, a lot of pagan traditions, songs, and rituals are only about 50 to 70 years old. Um, Talking about umbrella terms brings us to the point that paganism tends to fall under the term of witchcraft, which meant that in 1951, when the English anti-witchcraft laws were repealed, that covered a wide variety of things, including worship of the earth. So that is why in the 1950s there was this massive Reconstructionist movement to put together the puzzle pieces and to create options for people who are wanting to celebrate the earth. So when we say that it is very ancient, that comes with a big asterisk at the end.
So our third one also is about time. And I think many of us would agree that the Reformation never ended. The Reformation continues. You might even say Revelation is not sealed. There's a lot of ways to say this. Some people say that our UCC siblings would say God is still speaking, comma. And so there's still things unfolding. Here's me in Transylvania a couple years ago on sabbatical, and one of the realities is that what continued during the Reformation, or what started in the Reformation in a global sense, in a very unified sense, has continued. And in the United States is our context, where we continue to reform practices, add new things, incorporate new ideas. You know, the humanist movement that really, and the Renaissance and the Enlightenment periods, all shifted a lot of what we mean by Unitarian Universalism. And yet there's a thread that ties us back to Transylvania and to other parts of Europe and other practices of what was Unitarian Christianity. And so there is this anchor with it culturally within liberal Christianity, and or a taproot, you might call it, but the branches have spread far and wide to incorporate a more pluralistic source of nutrient and guidance of what we mean today of Unitarian Universalism. So I think that's a big part of kind of what we're seeing today in our leaning into pluralism, is that we continue to reform with the ages.
I love that one of the central works of Unitarian Universalism is Reformation, and one of our central works is Reconstruction. I love that we are both learning from our history, but actively working to improve for the future.
Right.
Oh, this brings us to the next one. Something that you may not know about paganism is that we encourage individual exploration of faith. What that means is we don't have a single holy book, we don't have a single creed or dogma, but we encourage everyone to find their own path to the divine, the creator, whatever you associate as the divine spirit that flows through all living things. We encourage everyone to explore what that means to them and how they connect with their faith, how they connect to the earth, to one another. There is no right or wrong path. It's very similar to everyone working to go up a mountain together to reach the same summit. Some people prefer to go with a guide to lead the way. Some people prefer to go on instinct and make adjustments along the way. But either way, we are all working towards the same goal together.
I like the funicular. That's the thing that kind of takes you up. That one's nice. And it has the word Nick in it. That's a nice one. Thank
I
you.
didn't know there was a word for that. That's our vocabulary word for
I
the day.
know. This again, someone saw my notes. Yes, we also really encourage a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Again, this is one of our legacy, late 20th, second half of the 20th century emphases, but really for generations around each person being able to find a spiritual path or an ethical path that works for them, to find a community. Our congregational style is, you don't like this community, find another community. Or you don't like this minister, wait a minute, no. And you,
I mean,
and
who doesn't?
but you have this ability to kind of find the path that is right for you, and choosing to do that in community is such a gift when it's but it doesn't only happen in community. Deep spiritual development is very much a solo practice, but it doesn't have to be an isolating practice. And so one of the things we do here, the way to get that out of us, and dialogue is one of those ways we can do that, is by bringing our questions and not just leaning into the answers, but to really savoring the questions themselves. I think Rilke said something like, live the questions, and to really honor them, and to not just beg for the answers, but to appreciate the richness that the question brings up in us.
So when we were planning this service, Nick threw out the quote, "It's hard out here for a pagan." If anyone, okay, I have one person who has heard that song. So one thing that I would like for folks to know about paganism is that even though we have a rough history of our practices, our rituals being intentionally erased, which I said made it harder to retrace our steps and rebuild our customs, our faiths, and our practices, it is a lot easier today, thank you to the internet. But it is still a bit difficult for many pagan communities who face opposition, who face prejudice or misunderstanding, which is part of the reason that I do so much public work to raise awareness about what paganism is. That we're not scary, we're not weird or deviant or other. We're just people that like celebrating the earth and cornbread. We have a lot of cornbread enthusiasts.
I'm seeing the cornbread through line here. This is good.
I have a recipe I'll send your way.
Okay, good. You too can have the pagan cornbread.
And I imagine things are hard for Unitarians sometimes.
Well, I think, part of that challenge is that we both pass as sort of liberal kind of Protestant milieu, but also we are, I think, promoting a very radical notion of beloved community. And I think part of that is through our work of being bridge builders. I mean, what's happening out here with the Interfaith campus is an inherently politically visionary concept of a populace that is celebrated for its religious diversity, for its cultural diversity, for its ethnic diversity. You take xenophobia, our immigration policies that are becoming enacted now, all of this stuff, bridge building, seems a lot less superfluous and sort of extracurricular, and it seems to become more central, more curricular to who we are, to what our plan is for being a more radically inclusive, while unapologetically still broadly and deeply celebratory of our pluralism. And that's part of why I'm so grateful the pagan community, the Tree of Knowledge Community Coven, has found a home here. We want this to be a place where not only we can learn from each other, but you can also have your individual life of nourishing one another and learning separately and together. So I think at the core of our high five is that we are bridge builders, in who we are across lines of religious difference, but in all kinds of differences. We try to build bridges. So I think we'll just stop there for a moment, take a little deep breath. So we're at the second half now of the time of dialogue, and I just want to appreciate just how much the dialogue is supplemented by beautiful music. That really brings out something. I think the mic's still on, Marty. How much that brings out just a different layer of our feeling and experiencing when we can have those musical moments to kind of ground us and let the words that were shared, saturate a little bit deeper into our hearts. So thank you. So A couple months ago in January, I think, I launched an acronym. Ooh, that sounds fun. Pew. Like a little firework. Circle. And I started talking about it in one of the services in January. Circle. To help us think about our work in this post-election, new administration, new chapter of interfaith community building, and as we live into our imagined 2030, 5 years of growing and changing together, which is this acronym, CIRCLE. Cultivating interfaith, resilience, courage, and love for everyone. So I think what we're doing today is leaning into especially the three outcomes we're looking for: resilience, courage, and love, towards the audience, everyone, not just you all here, but all the connections and nodes that you're connected to beyond here that you can take these messages of resilience, courage, and love to. And together, continuing to cultivate that within, on, and beyond the Interfaith campus, within this congregation and beyond this congregation. So resilience, courage, and love really do feel like, to me, the big three parts of our ministry these days. I don't know if what those words mean to each of us, but it feels like kind of what we're talking about. How do we become resilient to keep going? How do we find courage in the face of despair? And how do we find and elevate and celebrate love in a way and share it with people who need it in community, which is all of us. What do you think of that acronym?
I do love a good acronym.
Yeah.
And I think it really sums up not just the shared goals of a lot of our interfaith partners, but also a lot of the values that we share here at UUCCI.
Yep. And so resilience is sort of our first concept. And I think I'd be curious from you, as one of the leaders of the Tree of Knowledge Community Coven, how have these last couple of months been in regards to being resilient to the kind of the barrage of information that comes your way? Where do you find that sense of resilience from spirituality, community, cornbread, whatever it is? I'm really curious. How do you derive that resilience in your journey?
So, to answer the question about how things have been going for the last few months, things have been unpredictable. We had set out to have a 5-year plan to work towards becoming a 501c3 ministry, and later on buy property and buy a church within the next 5 years for the pagan community of Indiana. But with some unexpected changes during the last couple of months, we've had to shift gears, which isn't a horrible thing. It is jarring when things don't go to plan. It is a little unnerving when things are uncertain. But in times when we need to persevere, we often look towards nature to lead the way. We look for inspiration in the world around us because the Earth's been here forever. It's not going anywhere. So, how does the natural world cope with unexpected things? A good example that I've used with our community is when there is an obstacle in a river, things flow around it, things adapt, and so do we. We flow around these difficult times, or we slowly persevere and wear away at the trouble until it passes. And similar to UUCCI and Unitarian Universalists in general, we aren't built on a definite, we aren't built on a foundation that is unshakable, but we flow. I forget the exact quote, but it stuck with me years ago. UUs don't stand, we move.
Right, right. We don't stand for, what do you stand for? We don't stand, we move. Yeah, I do like that quote as well. I didn't say it first. I don't know who said that first, but it became very popular for a long time.
Well, I heard it from you first. You get some credit.
Well, I'm just a puppet. No, I'm just kidding. That was a joke. No, I mean, I love that. And the river imagery is so true. I mean, so much of religion, people turn to religion for certainty, for solidity, for unchanging, unwavering everlasting arms to be held in that. And sometimes the concepts of having a more river fluid spirituality is like, that's, I mean, the world's kind of like hard right now. Can I have some certainty? And that's again back to questions. Something that makes us lean into questions more than answers is that we can trust in the questions to keep guiding us, and trust in the ecological process of erosion of the water of the bank, to find new pathways around where we can flow on. So resilience, a little bit, is very much what you're sharing for us, is learning how to be adaptive, learning how to lean into this idea of emergence or emergent strategies that can be that can honor not a singular central hub and everything comes back to the hub, but multiple decentered points of authority that can lead to creative, unimaginable beauty. And so that's really important for us as well. One of the things in this time that I've been thinking about is the dual meaning of the word emergency, that there is something that is clearly a 5 alarm emergency going on in our world and in our country. And also there's sort of an emergency happening in our communities and across this nation and across the world. We're seeing that in the rise of authoritarianism and other sorts of efforts to suppress voices and diversity. There's an emergency of love that I think we're trying to foster and tend to as well. And the second one, courage, I mean, I think in a way has a relationship to resilience, but the way I look at resilience and courage is how we react to the things that are coming at us, and courage is how do we move forward. That is it's kind of a secondary step of choosing to move despite with our resilience, the courage to act. And I think the despair that many people feel, whether it's around, put aside government or politics, the idea of the environment and what is at stake in these next 10, 20, 50 years of our world's ecology, the despair that we might feel about our actions, and whether the courage to act is simply just not even enough. So how do you find courage to act, and act on behalf and for the earth, or for your fellow inhabitants of the earth, in the face of those things that might cause you despair?
In these very unsteady times, it's important to be rooted, not just rooted in our values, but also rooted in our joy, rooted in community, rooted in the things that are most meaningful to us. I've talked about flowing with the river, to be flexible and adaptable, but it's also important to know what is unmovable to us, what other outside influences cannot shake within us and within our communities. So, one of the courageous things that we do to instill a sense of stability is to be unapologetically rooted in our values, in our commitment to caring for our community, in our commitment to speaking out for ecological justice, speaking out for the rights of others. These are some of the very few things that are constants in paganism: our love for the earth and a love for all living things that share this world together. So, even though some people may wish to see a world without pagans in it, which I believe, there are many faiths that feel that they've heard similar sentiments, the world is more beautiful through diversity, not just in our ecosystems, but in this ecosystem of compassion where we all thrive together.
Hmm. Yes, and I really again resonate with the idea of being unapologetic, and for two reasons. One is apologetics is about defense. It's about being defensive, making a defense an argument for something. And as I started with Paulo Freire, the goal is to not become offensive, but to become humanizing. And that the goal is to not just switch from let's get off the defense and let's get on the offense. Let's start tearing people down. But we're creating a third way, which is around our collective humanization. And I think in so doing, it disarms those who would be offensive to us at different rates, and some are lost causes and things like that. But we continue, I think, to choose to be bridge builders in a time when it's so easy to isolate, so easy to go it alone. And so being unapologetic is not about becoming rude or losing our values, but it's about living and embodying them so much that we can't help when we encounter people to create an experience of humanization. So which brings us to love. And I think love to me, we preached on, or I talked about this in February, that Unitarian Universalists in this last iteration of our Reformation talked about putting love at the center of all we are, that love holds us together and holds our shared values together. And I'm wondering for you, how you resonate with love, what power love plays within your own personal life or in your community, or how you might experience love from an earth-centered orientation.
It's a wonderful question. And I believe that love is at the core of all of our works as pagans. Love not just for one another. We talk about brotherly love, the love of fellowship, but also we love the earth itself, all life that springs from it. And I was talking to one of my favorite people before service about the works of Robin Wall Kimmerer, who talks about the grammar of, I forget the quote she used, but essentially, when we talk about the world as something that is non-living, something that is separate from ourselves, it allows us to treat the world as a resource rather than as a neighbor that extends not just to the earth, the minerals, the trees, but also to living things, to animals. And once you start drawing that line of who and what deserves respect, it's easy to move that goalpost. It's easy to other people, to other our land, to other our different neighbors, whether they be plants or animals or people. So when we talk about love, it isn't just love for one another, but love for all living things is at the root of our faith.
Right. And love for love itself. I mean, I think the idea of celebrating love, it's not celebrating love of someone else. We're like celebrating love itself. And I also love celebrate as a choice for our previous Catholics in the room. You know, the idea of the celebration of Mass. You are putting on a ritual to hold up love and to honor love incarnate within any kind of gathering, any kind of space. To celebrate it is a beautiful thing. It's not just sort of like, well, thumbs up to love. We're celebrating love, and that love is worthy of celebration. It's a both meanings in there. And so love will continue to guide us, in our conversations, in our dialogues, in our community work, in our work in all of these fractal and rippling concentric circles of ministry. Within, as I say, there's a pluralism, there's a dialogue happening within every heart, among any two people, among a congregation, within a congregation, among congregations, in our wider community, ever expanding circles of dialogue. And we should honor each of those as worthy of love and celebration. So we're gonna have time now to make sure we bring in other voices in the room. And so what's gonna happen is you can raise your hand, and Louise will bring the microphone to you, and it would be nice to say your name just so because we don't all know each other, and even if we do, we might have forgotten each other's names, and so it's nice to say who we are. And if you have a question or a comment you'd like to offer to Brittany, myself, or to the general, we can have some time now for bringing your voices. As I say, where do we go or grow from here?